What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another installment of Things That Keep Me Up at Night podcast. I am here once again with producer Greg and Ryan as the resident expert of the day. Now, for spooky season, we are going to be talking about something truly spooky ooky, especially because not always do the, depths of horror in the fiction realm cross over to real life. But this is one example of something that's truly scary already, just in the fictional world, that had a very real world impact and implication, in reality. So we are talking about Slenderman. Now, when I say Slenderman, it immediately brings up a picture of something in your head. And I think we're all thinking of the same thing. Someone, a faceless entity, tall, towering over you, slender, long limbs following you. It's not a very pleasant image, but the weird thing is that it's also, there's no fangs, there's no teeth, there's no blood, there's no gore. It's not overtly what people would consider traditionally scary. It's kind of this faceless, silent being. So Ryan, like, what is your relationship with the Slender Man story? Greg, do you, producer Greg's here, do you recall the Slender Man story before anything happened in the real world?
Me or Greg?
Oh, Greg, you're silent, by the way.
Sorry, I was making noise. Yeah, I mean, I just remember it because I lived there around 2015 and 16, kind of after the story, but had known of the books and kind of, had heard stories of it just throughout my life, I think, randomly. I think just, podcasts, stuff like that, coming up. But that's my only relation to it. And I think Ryan has a little bit closer relation to it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, Ryan, what brings you here to talk about Slender Man, other than us asking you
to? So Greg had heard about it in his childhood, and I heard about it first from a game. It was like one of those like run through the maze game, and then like don't run into Slender Man, and so that was like my only take. And then all of a sudden this story hit, and I guess the reason I kind of know about what happened was because I live in the town that it happened like right next to. So I'm just stone's throw away from the city, and I work in that city. I just live in Milwaukee, so
okay, Slender Man is a fictional supernatural entity, and he was essentially birthed from what is known as creepypasta in internet culture, right? Something that is fictional, short tail, replicated. People take their own spins on it, and it gets kind of just regurgitated throughout the internet. Instead of copy paste, creepy pasta, it's like something that is constantly shared through forums, through Reddits, anything. And apparently, according to the BBC, Slender Man began in June of 2009. So a year after Greg and I graduated from high school, when a competition on the comedy web forum Something Awful asked for a modern myth with which to terrify people. And terrify people it did. And apparently it was quite popular because, again, there have been numerous stories. There have been horror-based games, as Ryan has referenced, and there has even been a motion picture that you can see on Netflix right now, fully based upon this crazy mythical creature. So, Ryan, you said, I live in this town. I work in that town. I live a hop, skip, and a jump away from the town of this happening. What happened? This is mythical, right? There's no way that nothing happened in real life, right?
So one would hope. But yeah, so pretty much I came to hear about it just like pretty much everyone else. It was in the news. It was huge. And two girls, Nissa Weir and Morgan Geyser, pretty much took their friend Peyton Lautner out into the woods and pretty much stabbed her 19 times. and the girl was able to crawl to a road where she was able to run into somebody. They called an ambulance and sent her off to the hospital. Thank God. And she survived. And obviously, both the girls were brought up on charges. And I mean, the
And
rest.
what age group were these girls?
They were both 12. Yeah, they were both 12, and I think Peyton was 11.
So this is like tweens.
Yeah.
This is like
Right.
tweens. So they're not really even, they shouldn't be even in like the angsty part yet.
Right. Right. And the whole thing is like, so I just had to come out and just say exactly what happened. Like, but there's so much to the story, from the court case to what brought them there, and like
Right,
like
because
the red flags.
when you hear of two girls luring a classmate into the woods and stabbing them, that's already like freaking nuts. That is already nuts. That's like, yikes. Like, what
I'm playing
went wrong?
Transformers and they're wandering into the woods.
Oh my God. When I was 12, Greg and I were going to Beaver Brook and catching like crayfish. Like we were lifting up rocks and looking for like grubs and stuff. Like, so okay, here's what's weird. That's already like yikes factor times a trillion. But then when you hear that they did it and they did it because of Slenderman, you're like, well, okay, hold on. Like what? So take us deeper.
So apparently, so little backstory. I have a younger sister. I'm going to keep names out per requested, but she's friends with Anissa's older sister.
Okay.
Anissa Wheaton. So I mean, those names are public. Everybody knows those names by now. You can look it all up on Wikipedia and all that fun stuff.
And which girl is Anissa?
Anissa was the girl that helped Morgan stab Peyton, and Anissa is, and I might as well just say it, but Anissa is currently out. She just got out last summer. She was released due to mental health. So,
okay,
before I get into the whole thing, obviously, she was released because of mental health and stuff. So she was allowed to leave. But anyway, so pretty much the whole thing started with the girls just being very weird. They were very into their computers, and they were just very much like not social and just kind of doing their own thing. And my sister was older than Anissa by a few years, so she was kind of hanging out with the older sister and would occasionally see her and stuff. Right. And was always just a little odd, and like always were staying in their room. And Morgan and Anissa were absolutely inseparable, and they kind of brought Peyton in like later on because they had been friends for so long, Anissa and Morgan. So yeah, all of a sudden Peyton became like the third wheel, and they started hanging out with her, and everyone thought it was kind of weird because they lived in Brookfield, by the way. So that's just right next to it. So that town of Brookfield is very cliquey. It's just a common thing in the area, and it's very let's put it this way, Ugg boots and pumpkin spice Starbucks lattes kind of community.
It's Amherst, New Hampshire. Okay. That's where we grew up.
So it's very kind of like fairy tale landy over there. So like the idea of this whole thing even coming too. So anyways, yeah, very cliquey, and they all of a sudden brought in this new girl, and they were all friends together, and so and no more than just a year or so later, this occurs, and it was very odd, and so pretty much that whole situation occurred, and obviously Anissa's older sister didn't want anybody talking about it. We bring it up in the group chat. I don't want to hear, no questions, no nothing, because my sister had a group chat, which Anissa's older sister was a part of, so they would talk about stuff, and obviously when this happened, I mean, it was huge. Everybody heard about it nationwide. So
I'm sure it rocked like a small idyllic town because it made its way everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself, do you think it would get the reach if it weren't for this added facet of Slenderman?
No, I don't think so.
It would have just been another weird like teenage thing. But so okay. This is something that I wanted to explore with you two. Ever since I can remember, this is going to get real deep real fast. Columbine happened when Greg and I were pretty young. And Ryan, you're like within a couple of years of us, right? You're a tiny bit older. And when Greg and I were in the middle school system at Amherst, The second Columbine happened and we were entering middle school, our school and the high school got a student resource officer. Okay. So we immediately got cops in our school. And the immediate talk was video games. Video games, violent video games like Doom and Duke Nukem and stuff, like things that were out then. That was the reason. That and like Marilyn Manson music and stuff. So that was the first time, well, really the second time that I recall media being implicated with like real world occurrences, right? Before that, it was when I was quite young in like elementary school, and Mortal Kombat. There was the big controversy over Mortal Kombat and the blood, and how Super Nintendo didn't have like the blood splatter. It was like sweat, but Sega Genesis had the blood. So, and I remember like hearing there are people like testifying to Congress about like why Mortal Kombat is like the worst thing ever. And right. Exactly. Yep. Tipper Gore like spearheaded that, right?
Yeah.
So fast forward throughout the years, and I don't know what your guys' thoughts on this was, but I was like, this is stupid. Like, there's no way people listening to Disturbed or like Marilyn Manson, that's not what pushed these people to do bad things. And then it's like, okay, Mortal Kombat, there being blood with like two like character like images like punching each other in like a 2D plane, that's not what's going to push people over the edge to do bad things. But then fast forward to this happening, and you wonder, all these kids that have been essentially raised, because we grew up with dial-up internet and like AIM chat rooms, but still we were playing outside, we were doing things. This younger generation who was raised on like the good internet and like now iPads and stuff, you got to wonder, I've kind of become the entity that I swore to combat, which is like these damn kids on the damn internet, like that's what's rotting their brains. But you have to wonder, would these kids have done it if it weren't for them being antisocial, closed off in their own world, being online, going on Reddit 24/7, like those forums be in their screen names being their own, chaperones and mentors, instead of going out and being in the real world and having a social life? What say you? Both of you chime in. Like, do you think these girls would have done this if it weren't for internet culture? Like, is that to blame?
100%. I think from my part too. I mean, I'll even take what you said a bit further, because like I'm even pulling up Columbine right now and thinking back to where I was then, and like I didn't even go to public school till high school, so I was in private school. Like,
right, I remember.
Very,
you and I
very
hung
small.
out though before you entered.
Oh yeah, I know, because you went to. Did you go to High Mowing for a little bit
exactly.
too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So like, even thinking about that, like I had, we had nothing until really high school. I mean, I think, most people did have video games and stuff, but I just wasn't interested. So like, I didn't even get that experience till high school, where, I was introduced to Halo, which was like, pretty far along in this journey, where there was like, people getting put into my school because they were playing too many video games. You know what I mean? Like, because they were like, you need to like have a little bit more of life, because like my school was like, alternative, like outside most of the time and stuff, which was amazing. And now thinking about it, I'm like, I was, very, very lucky, honestly. Didn't really think about it at the time, but even music back then, like it's always something. Like you can always there's always something that really does kind of, I don't know, influence culture, obviously. But like, it's just, it's insane. Cause I mean, now you see kids, they're on iPads at, 2-3 years old, and, that's going to be the rest of their lives. So it's just like, I don't even know how to,
you got to wonder what that interaction's like. I remember at a young age, my parents just talking to me, right? Even if I couldn't speak back, my parents interacting with me.
Right.
And you got to wonder if, like, you go out to a restaurant anywhere, even here in LA, you see families show up and the parents are talking, and the second they sit down, they plop a tablet in front of the kid. and
Right.
and it's effective. It shuts the kid up, and the kid's
Right.
just there, munching on whatever the parents like give to them. The kid's just there munching, watching Coco Melon or whatever kids watch,
Mhm.
Yep.
and
My son.
Peppa Pig and stuff like. Yeah,
Watching the kids' Netflix channel.
I know.
Yeah, but it's like, like if I had that, like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's like it's what it's turned into, but because like those are good influences, you can say, like, but like I was brought up around good influences, but there's just easily a way to, I don't know.
But I'm
Not
talking about the undercurrent of that.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, no,
so
I get that.
so I don't even know what Coco Melon is. I know that it's a
They're
thing.
all about it.
And Peppa Pig is like another thing, and they might have morals, scattered throughout these things, and I'm sure they go through their ABCs and everything. But what I'm saying is this tech cannot replace human to human interaction, parents talking to you.
Agreed. And as a dad, I'm 100% right there with you, because me and my wife we didn't give my son a tablet. One, it's her tablet, not his.
Mhm.
So he has to learn to respect her.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah.
So yeah, and eventually, yes, he'll probably end up getting one as he gets older. But we really limit his time, and they're all educational. Like he's 3 years old. I mean, he's like three and I don't know, like three and a little bit, a couple months,
Mhm.
and he can do simple addition and subtraction.
That's
Like
great.
so, I mean,
It's better than
and
me, probably.
he can identify all of his letters and his numbers. I mean, he's a smart kid, but we also read to him every single night. I mean, I just literally got done reading to him before I put him down and sat here and talked to you guys. So, I mean,
Mhm.
I read him 3 books, and they're always like story based, like don't lie, share with your friends,
Exactly.
respect, So we do make sure that the material that he's given, like Coco Melon, that's very like infanty at this point
Mhm.
for him, but like those rudimentary like shapes and colors and identifying things, like then there's the mindless stuff like
Mhm.
Teletubbies. I know that's kind of old and it's not around anymore, but
Yeah, but
like
I have a
that,
frame of reference at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, that nonsensical talking and like
Mhm.
just flashy pictures, there's no substance. So we do try and like, watch Blippi, things like that. And Blippi goes through and talks about colors, learn about machinery. It's like my son's obsessed with excavators.
He's gonna rebuild a Chevy block. And,
Yeah.
This
I
is
love
how
it.
you calibrate a carburetor.
Yeah, it definitely it definitely comes down to like the undercurrent and like what these people are getting fed, and how do you
Dude, at the same time,
like everyone's gonna be like, everyone has access to it. It's like that's just what they're interested in. It's like, how do you actually stop that? It's like, was it gonna happen either way?
so I'm playing devil's advocate here, and because the truth is, I think it's obviously more complicated than it was their outside influences that forced them to do this.
course.
I don't know anything about these girls' upbringing, by the way. I don't know if Ryan, if you have any insight.
Solid homes across the board, all 3 of them.
Yeah,
So-
it's crazy.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so outside of that, I don't think I can definitively say just because you shop at Hot Topic and you listen to like alternative music and you like horror movies and games that you're going to go out and do stuff. Because like one of my favorite bands is Suicide Silence and like Slayer, and like the t-shirts that I wear, right? And you can see them in my Time Teller episodes. They have like skulls with like snakes coming out of their mouths and like literally like blood rain and like corpses and stuff. Like, and I don't think that I have any of these I'm very social. In fact, I don't have any of these antisocial things. So I don't think that just because you shop at Hot Topic, you like horror movies, and you listen to edgy stuff, you're a bad person that is antisocial. I think it takes a certain type of person to do these bad things, and I think that they will probably find a way and a reason to do bad things regardless of what those things are. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Right.
Yeah, let's be real. We're pretty much around the same age, and we remember when the internet came out and it was popular, and your friend told you about that one site you could see some
Right.
of the really
Right.
the stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
No, we
Pain
watched-
Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
People
Oh,
were, yeah.
Yemi.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes you didn't have a choice back then. Stuff just popped up. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, whoa.
no way.
Hey, you ever seen the Serbian film?
Yeah,
I know exactly, dude. Yeah, IRL, like actual
Yeah.
snuff films, and you were like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this person died or not, and I don't want to.
Right.
I'm just gonna assume it's fake, even though it's probably real.
And it's it's like now I think people see less and less of that. Honestly, like people are less influenced that unless they're searching it out. So it really does come down to like upbringing, and it comes down to like these other factors that clearly were at play here too. If you really do look into it, and now I mean, Brian, I think you can talk a little bit more about this. Like, obviously one of them just got let out because of mental health issues. Like, it really does come back around to that. Like every one of these scenarios, it's just like back in 1999, people wouldn't talk about that. People wouldn't talk about the impacts of the mental health. That was actually the biggest factors in all this. They're just like, hey, what can we attach to this to make it, front page news, and then, also give it some sort of angle to make it, actually interesting, instead of like talking about something no one wants to talk about. Because that's really what I feel like it came down to till till very, very recently, which is like why I think we can actually talk about this in this way now too, like we can.
Well, I think that
like,
this
hey,
is uniquely interesting because this is something that is so clearly fake. Like Slenderman does not exist.
Right.
And you have to wonder. And Ryan, again, I don't know if you have some insight being a resident expert. Well, you're a parent even, so maybe just give me your personal opinion. Do you think these children, because if you're 12 years old, you are a child. I'm 33 now. I'm going to call you a child. Do you think these children actually believed that Slenderman was like influencing them? And what did they say? Like, what was their excuse, reasoning? What?
Sure. The aftermath kind of.
Yeah.
So obviously that, she told her story and said, hey, it was, Morgan and Anissa that, are the ones that stabbed me. And when they picked them up, they almost walked like 5 miles, and they were along I-94, which is a highway apparently. And they were coming out of like these deep woods, and the cops picked them up, both of them. And, obviously started to talk to them. They were pretty compliant, apparently, according to the police report and everything. And
why were cops? So, by the way, sorry, when did this happen? What year? About?
It was May 31st, 2014.
2014. Okay, so we were well within the smartphone era.
Oh yeah.
So okay, break it down for us a little bit.
GPS.
So these two girls, Morgan and Anissa, were they plotting this? Did they have her as a mark from the get-go, or?
Yeah. So according to the whole court documents and everything, they had planned it out. It was supposed to be a sacrifice to impress Slenderman, was their words. And there's truly no basis for it, because as we touched base before, there's been all these different creepypastas. It's been passed along. So like, I don't know where they were getting that they needed to sacrifice anyone or impress him. I'm not really sure where that whole thing comes from. There's not like
what was their? Did they want to? So they were making an offering to him for what reason? To appease him? Why? Were they going to go live with him in his realm, or like what would like?
It doesn't really say. Like maybe they thought to keep him from coming after them. I don't know. There's not really anything definitive on the Wikipedia and the court documents. Nothing that I could find that was like, we did it because of X, Y, and Z. They just said they wanted to impress Slenderman, and it was an offering to him. And so clearly they bought into it, deeply.
So you think they really believed it?
So that's where I was kind of actually leading to. So when they were arrested and everything, obviously the officers talked to them and were, kind of interrogating them softly.
But I'm sorry, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but hold on. So they plotted this.
Yeah.
And then, so break it down from them plotting it, them bringing her into the woods, and then why were the cops there in the first place? Did a roaming cop just see these two young girls walking down the I-95, or was the victim's parents like, yo, where's my kid?
Oh, sure. So pretty much, so obviously I wasn't there or anything, and neither was my sister. From what everything says, so Morgan was the brains of the outfit. She was the one who wanted to commit the action. She was the
Right.
one who apparently convinced Anissa and all of the whole 9 yards. So it was truly Morgan that was kind of behind the thing. And like I said before, my sister was friends with Anissa's older sister. So Morgan would always come over to Anissa's house. Apparently they had a bigger house, easier to have friends at. And
Mhm.
that's where they would sit there and watch their videos and isolate themselves pretty much.
Right.
And yeah, they, according to the court documents, they did plan it. It was a whole idea. Morgan attempted not attempted, I'm sorry, put the whole thing together pretty much.
Orchestrated it.
She got the knife. She brought it in a backpack. So they planned on it, and literally they took her into the woods. And I don't know the exact actions, like they turned around on her like, ah!
So I
what.
read that one of them, I don't know if it was Anissa or Morgan, but one of them counted down, and
Oh.
then they like both went at it, which is like nuts to me. That's
Yeah,
terrifying,
insane.
because like you think you're hanging out with your friends, like,
Right.
and then they
they're
both
like,
start
"Why are they
counting, and you're
counting?"
like,
Jesus.
Yeah, I never heard that. So I mean, who knows? It could be.
That
But-
probably gives a lot of people flashbacks because of tickle fights. No, I'm
oh,
just kidding.
yeah. Well, that's best case scenario. Now, I guess
Right.
worst case scenario, your friends just pounce on you with some knives.
Right, because I do
and
remember
stab
that
you 17
happening
times.
like multiple times. Like that is like how you start like anything as a child. You just start counting down.
Well, dude, when people start, you don't know if you're supposed to like run and hide because we're
Right.
playing tag or we're
When
playing
you're out in the
like
woods,
Manhunt.
it's like, yeah, is
something.
Manhunt about to start? Like, where am I
like-
supposed to go? It's like, where'd these knives come from?
And dude, if they're your friends and you compliantly went to the woods with them, the last thing you think is going to happen is them like killing you. So when they're
Right.
counting down, you're probably like, oh, we're playing a game or something. Like, okay.
Right.
You're-
Right.
I start counting the other way.
Yeah.
Right.
One, two.
Yeah.
You gotta like make it funny now. Like,
Yeah, right.
So,
Just
okay.
fuck.
So they bring her into the woods. They have knives.
And they stabbed her 19 times, and apparently both of them did the stabbing action. I don't know exactly how many times they counted, who did what, but yeah, it was 19 times in total. And yeah, they were apparently like pocket knives, and another one was like a small little like steak knife kind of thing. And they apparently put them in a bag. After they were done stabbing her, they thought she was dead, and they took off, and she was not dead, and she literally crawled down a trail where some people were, and they actually found her, called an ambulance, and they came and got her. And as soon as they got in the ambulance, obviously they started asking questions and stuff, because the police were called as well, usually when ambulance is dispatched, so it was a cop.
Right.
So
Especially when you find a little girl in the middle of the woods with 19 stab wounds.
right.
yeah.
So
Get an
so, yeah.
ambulance. Do you need a police officer? Nah, just an ambulance.
Yeah, we're good. So yeah, and then obviously they asked her the questions, and she came out right away. I mean, literally within a half an hour to 40 minutes of her being taken, they were already dispatched looking for Anissa Weir and Morgan Geyser. They had pictures, they knew exactly who they were, and yeah, sure enough, they found them along I-94. The cops stopped them, picked them up. They were completely compliant, and they found the knife in the bag. Yeah, so I mean, both knives, yeah, and everything was all good. And they hauled them on in, and obviously you had to call in the parents and stuff, because you need parents' permission in order to interrogate. And from what I understand, the parents gave permission, and on came the madness of them telling them why they did it. And yeah, just, and then the whole thing that I was kind of alluding to was, obviously Morgan was more or less the brains of the outfit who orchestrated everything,
Mhm.
but Nissa showed empathy from the get-go, and that was one thing that the officers kind of noted, was that she showed true empathy throughout the entire interview process, the court proceedings. However, Morgan did not, and she was very wholeheartedly into the fact that she had to do this. This had to happen.
Mhm.
And Peyton had to be the sacrifice, and that even rang throughout the entire court proceedings. So obviously they were both taken in. They were 12 at the time, but due to the nature of the crime, state of Wisconsin found that they should try them as adults, which is
Jesus.
obviously very controversial, because we're talking about 12-year-old girls,
Right.
and not everybody knows the full story or has really looked into it. They just see, oh, poor 12-year-old girls having to face trial as adults. What? And,
Yeah, but let's
they'll
be
find-
honest, most 12-year-olds don't lure another
Right.
12-year-old
Like, it
in the
was-
woods and stab them 19 times. Like that's
It was
pretty
like
And this isn't
Totally.
like a preteen fist fight where it's like someone punched someone and then that person got like a little bit more hurt than they initially anticipated. Like that, this isn't like a scuffle or something. This is
But
like premeditated. Like
that's
it's
what I'm
planned.
saying. Yeah, like they planned this out for a while. That's the only way you can, look at this from this angle. It's like
It's kind of
they were
scary.
counting down, making it up as they were counting down. They weren't like, "Oh yeah, this is what we're gonna do." They
Also, I mean, and this was probably laid out, I assume, from the prosecutors, but each step literally that they took further into the process, calling her up to ask her to hang out, putting the knives in the backpack, going into the woods. Like those were numerous opportunities for each one of the girls to decide like, hey, this, you know what, like we should probably reconsider this. We should probably not do this. This is a bad idea. We're not going to do this. No, they kept going until they actually freaking did it. And thank God the victim was like one tough cookie and she lived. But I mean, you got to assume that she probably has some, just because like her physical wounds may have healed. This probably is not very good for her trusting of the outside world at this point. Like,
Yeah.
anyone around. I mean,
right.
It seems like everyone in Wisconsin is pretty tough because they seem to fight back when in a lot of these situations. But
It's the cold. It's the cold in the Midwest, man.
You know what I mean? Like,
Go Pack.
Crazy.
Sorry about Sunday.
Oh,
that was close though. That was a great game.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
So, okay. What, again, I'm going to ask you guys again. Greg, chime in as well. Do you think these girls truly believed that Slender Man like needed them to do this? And if that's the case, would they have done something bad if they didn't know about Slenderman? Right? Because if they truly believed it, then we have to come to the conclusion that, well, if it weren't for the internet and stuff, then they probably wouldn't have heard about Slenderman. They wouldn't have done something like this. Or do you think that they probably would have done something bad? It just would have been a different thing.
Like how do you come up with that? Like it could have manifested itself in any other way if there wasn't the internet, but
right.
How are we to know? Like
yeah.
Like how
it's just a really bizarre thing because I don't
how do we know like
my whole business is online, right?
Right.
And I'm a huge like consumer of online, on demand now culture, right? Like I need everything now. I have Amazon Prime, next day delivery, same day delivery. I like the instant gratification of the internet. I think now we are seeing the ramifications though of having everything coming to you and you not having to interact at all with like the outside world. Now, right. I don't want it to come off as me being like, we got to go back to the Stone Age, people. Like the internet's back. Because again, my whole business, my livelihood is online. I'm literally talking to people that, I mean, Greg lives in LA now, but like I'm talking to people that aren't in the same room as me. So the internet can do great things, but it can also manifest. Like, I don't think that the internet is to blame here, honestly. I think this girl and potentially the other one would have found something else to influence them into doing something bad, personally.
Yeah. It just so like it's yeah, it's just so hard to say what like.
Yeah, I guess I'm playing the devil's advocate. I would say it's kind of like, would a wife cheat if she didn't have, Tinder or whatever? Like she's sitting there tempted. She might not have if she wasn't tempted, but because that, so maybe.
But it happened before, anyways. You know what I mean? Like you can make the argument that there's been affairs for years. So it's like, well, if you could take this one avenue away, right? Like that's what I just keep thinking of. It's like, yeah, but you're right. Yeah, we can't go back to the Stone Age. It isn't the internet's fault. It would have manifested in some other way, but
Yeah, but it's
Would
just
it?
okay. This is another really controversial thing, right?
Yeah.
The whole firearm debate.
Right.
So the thing is I find it kind of illogical to blame the tool for the person's actions,
Right. I do
because
too. Yeah.
I think people that want to do bad things will find a way to do bad things regardless of what they have access to. They're going to do a bad thing, right?
Right.
Now there's ways to mitigate this with being proactive and helping people and listening to people and letting people know that if they are having certain feelings, they can talk to people, and that's all well and good. But in other areas, and I'm not trying to make this into a political thing, but in other areas where guns are less accessible, there are still mass killings and people doing bad things and crime. So it's like, I don't think we can blame the tool here being the internet, especially when we look at these two girls, right? So one was the mega mind, one was like the mastermind, right? The other one, who I guess got let out because of mental issues, I think we can come to the conclusion that the mastermind probably is a liability regardless of internet or not. I think that she probably would have found an influence to coerce her into doing a bad thing. Now, the one that got let out early, I think that she was also a liability that was prone to being influenced, but not so much by like the Slenderman thing. I think that she was looking for leadership and she found it in the mastermind. And so she was being influenced by another person, right? By the main girl.
Right.
And so I think both of these types of people are potentially pretty dangerous. People that are so weak-willed that they are able to be coerced by another person, and then the people who are potentially so, I want to call them like wild cards, that they could literally find something online and be like, oh yeah, this is it, baby, this is it. I'm gonna kill something for this guy.
Right.
This is insane. So Ryan, what came of this?
So pretty much, Morgan was charged with first-degree attempted homicide, and Anissa was charged with second-degree attempted homicide. And this plays a big part into why Anissa was let out early. So pretty much, they were both sentenced to 25 years to life, with 25 years of extended supervision, which pretty much means probation. Very heavily guarded probation. So anyways, fast forward to about 7 years later, both the girls are 19, and Anissa was able to appeal because both of them were found guilty, even though Anissa originally pleaded not guilty, and then they went back and forth a little bit. I don't know the whole rigmarole of it, but Morgan, the mastermind, was pretty much like assessed immediately to be schizophrenic. So once they got a hold of her and were able to talk to her, they were like, "Oh yeah, schizophrenia, no question about it."
Mm-hmm.
When it came to Nissa, it was a little different, and they could see a little bit more of a normalcy to her, which is why they were a little bit more lenient. And this was the one that I mentioned, showing a little bit more empathy and had apologized for her actions. Where Morgan was like, "Nope, stone cold, did this needed to be done. I stand firm on that." And this was different. So that's why they were a little bit more lenient with her. So like I said, Morgan got 25, and Morgan got 20 with 20 extended. And because she had good, everything she was cooperating and working with them and all that stuff. Yeah, she appealed it when she was first able to, and she was granted it, and she was released. And yeah, so among my sister's friends, they, however, were not very happy. None of them believed that this should have been let out, kind of how you were saying, regardless of Morgan's influence, the fact that you were that easily coerced into doing something so heinous. There's a big difference of like, hey, mom said we can't go past Main Street. Let's go past Main Street. Or, hey, let's take our friend out and
let's not have the cookies mom hid in the cupboard.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, let's do it. It'll be cool. Yeah. No, this is very different. This is like very, very, very different.
So yeah, it was a very rough situation.
So as a parent, not to take it too personally, but how will you feel you'll allow your kids' relationship with this like horror fiction be? That was a really poorly constructed sentence. What I'm trying to say is, how, as a parent, will you allow your kid interact with this type of content? Are you at all worried about it? Or, I mean, do you partake in horror stuff? I mean, you mentioned that you learned about Slenderman from a video game.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm big into everything horror, man. I could talk about horror all day, all night. I mean, I got posters in my office at work, Pennywise. I have a Pennywise tie tack. I mean,
Right.
I have more horror shirts than I do work shirts.
Right.
Yeah, I used to be Fulci fan. Oh yeah, I go way back. So I'm huge into horror. So it's gonna be part of my son's life. So, but I think that's how I grew up. I mean, my grandma, both my parents weren't really into like horror too much. My dad maybe a little bit because he was, guy and stuff. But
Right.
my grandma was the one who was straight into horror. She was like,
That is
"Hey,
awesome.
come watch it, Nightmare on Elm Street with me."
I love it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, my grandma was awesome. Love her. God rest her soul. But God, yeah. So I really got into horror because of my grandma. So I mean, my wife is huge into the Resident Evil franchise. I mean, she breathes Resident Evil. I mean, she would dress in umbrella.
Hits and misses there, both with the films and the video games.
I'm an old school guy, so I always talk about the first three. I mean, 4 was really good, but the side ones and and the movies, the first one was cool. The rest,
right.
Oh man, playing Resident Evil 2 for the 64, no load time.
Yeah, I just remember the first one with the skinned zombie dogs jumping through the window when you're going down that hallway. The first time I almost pissed myself. I was like, what? And the thing is like they're pre-rendered rooms that you walk in, right? So you have kind of like tank control. So you're like, I need to run away. Hold on one second. Let me rotate my character.
It's old. Gosh.
But okay, so you're going to allow your child to partake of this stuff.
Oh yeah, certainly. But there's definitely going to be that line. I mean, if there was any sort of red flags or any sort of like, creepiness, like me and my wife are pretty normal. So I mean, and my son's got a great sense of humor and he's fun and he's already 3 and I mean, he's got a personality like no other. So if we were starting to pick up on something that was like, hey, this is kind of red flaggy, like I'm watching the Dom series right now and the kid's getting into taxidermy and I'm like, my dad would have showed me that at any age. I would have been like, absolutely no way possible. Not picking up roadkill. Dude, I got video games. I'm gonna go skateboarding with my friends. I'm not picking up roadkill with you digging into it in the garage. Get out of here.
Well, the thing is, I don't know how accurately that the Netflix adaptation. I say adaptation, but
yeah, no, we'll talk about that another time though.
But the thing is, they made it seem like potentially like the mom taking those pills and stuff like could have like messed him up. Again, guys, no spoilers here. If you don't know who Jeffrey Dahmer is, I don't know what to tell you. You're clearly old enough to listen to this podcast, so you probably know who Jeffrey Dahmer is. We'll talk about this in a different podcast. Ryan will join us again because we're doing spooky season. I don't know how accurate the Netflix interpretation of the story is. I know that they have to get views and clicks and stuff, and they need to build hype. But they do make it seem like the mom was a pill popping wackadoo, and they show her taking. I think the quote is like she takes 15 pills a day, and they're meeting with like a maternity doctor, like a OBGYN or something, and you gotta. I think that they're using that as an excuse and a storytelling device of, oh, this is why he is the way he is. I don't know if that's the case. We'll talk about this next week when we talk about Jeffrey Dahmer. But I feel like that would be like a pretty big red flag, like having a kid that's like, I want to pick up roadkill and cut into it. And let me can I take one of these little piglets home that we've been dissecting in science class? Like, even the teacher in the Netflix thing.
No one's ever asked me that.
No one's ever asked me that in 22 years of teaching. Yeah, go for it. It's like, what?
Yeah, why not?
Dude, those things stinked in high school. I don't know if you guys ever did it.
We did frogs.
Yeah, frogs.
Oh yeah, we did the pigs. Oh,
dude.
Stunk.
It's just it's.
Well, I
So-
just think it's just like the red flags are everywhere. Obviously, they make it look like that, and I just think in this case too, it's like I'm sure there's red flags, and I don't think you can
But
really.
Ryan, you say that they came from like normal families.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
that's what I've been told.
to be honest with you, like I think that is the places that the red flags get overlooked the most, because it's almost like, how could that be? It has to be a joke. Like the rest of the family is probably making fun of it. You could think of a million different scenarios where
Brushing it off.
the red flag gets overlooked, and that, like, 9 times out of 10, I think that's what's happening here. I mean, even just to reference the Jeffrey Dahmer thing again, it's like, yeah, well, he got, no spoilers, but like if you get left alone for a long period of time, like boredom, all these different things, the mental health, all that kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, you're gonna start
Bad
doing
family
stuff.
environment.
Yeah, like all the different things. It's like you only need one or two of those things to really have a spiral, start. And he had like 12 of them. So
Yeah.
you're not making excuses. You're just saying, hey, like the recipe was there for disaster.
Right.
Here I think it's the same thing, but especially from a very normal family, when you don't have the tools or never experienced this, yeah, like this kind of thing is going to happen if you don't
Or
have
when you're just
the resources.
antisocial and your parents
Right.
are like, "Oh, he's just one of the she's
Yeah.
just edgy. She's just
Yeah.
edgy. She's a teenager."
Right.
That's how teenagers are. It's
And
like,
I mean, like I
well,
have firsthand
mean,
experience of that too. Like it's like, yeah, like I know that happened to me, but like I did it to myself, and it's like, not that bad.
yeah,
But
but you didn't lure me into the woods and kill me
Right.
when we were 12.
but at
right?
the same time, it's like it's the exact. You gotta identify, like not compare. Like you gotta be like, okay, that's like the exact same interaction with my parents. Probably was what happened, because every single parent was doing it at the time. They were doing exactly what you just said. They're just going, oh yeah, just one of those.
Yeah, he's just a teenager.
Just a teenager, like I can't imagine how many times my parents probably just said that to themselves or each other or everyone else in my family. They all could have been in on it, but like,
Yeah, but
I also just,
but there's truth
like I
to
wanted
that,
that.
though.
Yeah.
And Ryan, as a
100%, yeah.
parent, chime in. It's like there is some truth to the stereotypical like growth hitch points in a child's development, like the terrible twos. Like, oh, he's just a 2-year-old, like
Yeah.
never. Oh, and then it changes when they're around 5, and then it changes when they're around 10, and then it changes when they hit puberty. Oh boy, does it change when they hit puberty. And then then they get into this kind of like 16-year-old, I'm an adult soon. And then you get
Yeah.
18, they're like, I am an adult, I know everything, I'm invincible.
But
And
like,
then, so there is some truth to these, like,
oh, 100%. Yeah.
so it's not totally wrong when a parent's like, oh, he's just being a teenager. Nothing I say is going to be okay with them because they're just a teenager. They want to hang out in their room and go out with their friends. And
but now we have the ability to sit down and have these conversations and listen to other people have these conversations, which our parents didn't have. So it's just like, you really got to think about the full circle here. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it's like I would be in the same exact boat if I wasn't able to analyze all these situations, before I had kids or have kids. Like I'm not,
don't know.
like that's the thing. Like they didn't have the internet, so the internet coming out when it did, like we never.
Well, we're talking about Dahmer and stuff.
But I know, that's what I'm saying. Like those parents didn't have the same resources.
But what about
that our parents had? And
right, but what about this? But these girls with the Slenderman Stabbing,
that's what I'm saying.
2014, they had the wherewithal.
No, but I'm saying my parents are in the same categories. That still, they didn't have, our parents didn't have the internet in 2014 like we do now. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like in 2014, our parents weren't parenting any different than Dahmer's. Like I'm
Okay,
sorry.
I kind of see
like, you know what I'm saying? Like they haven't caught up. It's still boomers.
Right, boomers.
Right.
Boomers. Yeah.
They were still raising kids in 2014. It hadn't, switched over to the next generation. So like, I'm not making excuse here. I'm trying to like think of all these different things, because it does all, it all relates, and it all comes back to it. Like,
well, Ryan,
the same scenarios over.
As someone who is at least at minimum tangentially connected to this, and as a parent, and I keep mentioning that you're a parent because Greg and I are not. What is your takeaway? like with this story?
So when it comes to your kid, like I mean, I'm not gonna pretend like I'm some sort of expert. My son's 3 in a couple months, so
Right.
but I will say I'm much older than my siblings. So my sister that I referenced earlier, she's 9 years younger than me, and my other sister's 10 years younger than me.
Okay.
My other sibling, rest in peace, he's 6 years younger than me. So there's not. I was much older than all of my siblings, so I had that really big disconnect because when my youngest sister was 6, I was 16 and driving.
Right.
She was watching Blue's Clues. So I my parents really had to focus on my younger siblings, and I was a kid that was kind of left to his own demise, do his own things. And I was a teenager. I made stupid mistakes, and I went and partied when I shouldn't have, stayed out later that I should have, sneaked
Same
out.
thing.
Right.
Typical teenage stuff. I never did anything above and beyond. But
Right.
I also grew up in the age of, you're out partying, you're not sitting there on the computer watching YouTube videos as a
Yeah,
kid. When I was
exactly.
16, 17, YouTube wasn't even a thing. That was
Mhm.
that I was 16, 17. That was what, 2003, 2004? Like, yeah, that wasn't a thing. I
Yeah.
mean, you still had the AOL Instant Messenger and stuff, but
Right.
the
Yeah,
idea,
that's all I had.
right, the idea of, obviously my kid's going to be into horror stuff. He already likes horror stuff. I mean, he'll point it out and say, I want to watch this or I want to watch that. So he's already into that kind of stuff. But when you have a child, and I don't mean bring out the dad talk or anything, but
No, I asked for it though.
Yeah.
it's a relationship with another person that you'll never experience unless you have a kid. It's kind of
Mhm.
and then it's super weird because your parents are as close as you'll ever get to that child-parent relationship, but you're the child, so because your
Right.
parent is always going to be that
I'm like,
constant.
I'm just
You only
kidding.
want But
Interesting.
so having that nonstop, I mean, I see this kid every day. I wake up with him. I go to, so it's like, with my girlfriend or my now wife, I could, if I wanted to break that off, like, oh God, she's going crazy, I'm not interested in being with her anymore. I could just be like, hey, sayonara,
Right.
But with my son, no,
But
no, no,
that
no, no.
kid's your kid until
Always.
forever. Yeah.
Nothing will ever change. So that's a
Right.
relationship. So like when my wife was pregnant and everything, we're oh yeah, baby. No one prepares you for the fact that you have brought a relationship into your life that will never go away. And if it does go away, you're kind of a POS. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So-
Or something terribly tragic has happened, which is like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all bad. It's all bad.
All
Like,
bad,
it
yeah.
is all bad. Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a weird thing. So I've gotten to know him over the last 3 years that this kid's been alive, and I know him very well. Because just like you would your girlfriend or your really close friend, if you and Greg spend a lot of time together, you would know, oh yeah, Greg is gonna go get coffee in the morning.
Mhm.
Roman's gonna go grab my son, he's gonna go grab this or whatever in the morning. It's stuffy, so
Right.
as they get older, I'm just gonna get to know him even more and grow
Right.
with him more and more. So I think keeping that relationship with your children and having that, like, hey, how was school today? Hey, who's your friend? What'd you guys go do?
Checking in on him.
Yeah.
And just knowing what's going on without even having to say anything. I think like at least for me, like as myself, like that's my human connection. Like everyone has their own thing, but like,
Yeah.
being able to raise somebody in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So keeping the open dialogue, like I try not to have that parental mindset. I try and think of it as like, I'm going to be your guidance. I'm going to be, your mentor. I'm going to show you how to do things properly and how to be a good human.
Mhm.
I don't want to have to yell at you if I don't have to, but oh my God, dude, he's 3. So I mean, oh my God, I don't want to get into it. It's rough. I mean, but everyone says at this age is rough, so I kind of expected it. But
Right.
we'll
Yeah.
get over the hump, and he'll get normal, and he'll come. I feel like that because everyone kind of starts having their memories around 4 or 5 years old. So I'm hoping that vision kind of opens up, and he starts seeing the world for what it
He
is.
gets like sentience and he's like, oh my God, I'm actually in here.
Yeah.
Literally. Dude, I can walk up to him and be like, and he's in a bad mood, like, Roman, do you want ice cream with sprinkles? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I love it.
Words so you can fly? No. Go away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He learns, he has presets now.
Yeah.
Words. Go away.
And the worst part is the presets come from me and my wife. So
Of
he'll
course.
say things that we tell him, like, hey, Roman, stop doing that. And then we'll walk in 5 minutes later, like, Daddy, stop doing that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who are you?
What?
It's like one of those Teddy Ruxpins that like has a tape deck in it and it just like repeats things.
Literally.
I love it.
So I think just having that close relationship, keeping that open communication, talking to your kid, not ignoring him. You know, something's going on, talk to him, ask him what's going on. Don't just pretend like everything's okay because you live in Brookfield, Wisconsin, and Ugg boot Starbucks country. You know, everything is not a
Pumpkin spice latte. Yeah.
It's so funny because I used to sell Ugg boots to stores in Brookfield, Wisconsin. That's what I was doing when I was living there. Yeah.
It comes full circle.
It comes full circle.
So Ryan, so we've spoken about this. I'm sure we could take this way further. I'm very excited for our Jeffrey Dahmer installment. We
Yeah.
can get into the accuracies or inaccuracies of the current flavor of the week, which is this Netflix adaptation of his life. But as we did last time, do you have any? You just gave us some very good, parental child rearing advice, but what would you tell the listener if this was the last recording that you made?
As far as like parental stuff?
No, just anything.
Oh.
We've literally had someone tell us to eat your vegetables.
I think you asked me this last time. I can't even remember.
Yeah, we do it every podcast.
We just do it every
we
time.
do it every podcast.
Listen to my music.
Oh yeah, wait. So guys, he's in a band. Plug it one more time for us.
Plug it.
So my band is Aokigahara out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, we don't have any music quite yet, but we will have stuff coming in winter. We're in the recording studio. We're in the process of getting everything done. We're a band straight up from the ground floor, so it's been quite an undertaking, and we are a slam band out of Wisconsin. So fans of the stuff.
Hell yeah. Well, we will find it. We'll get you can send us the information. We can plug it in the description of the episodes that come out. But guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us on this spooky ooky installment of things that keep me up at night. And just check in on your people, whether it's your kids, your friends, even your parents, man. So they're still humans. Just check up on the people around you and make sure that they're, you'll know when I feel like you'll know if something's up. Just check. But and I guess don't get coerced by any online meme entities telling you that they need a human sacrifice. So if I had to leave you guys with something, probably just don't lure your friend into the woods and stab them 19 times. Yeah. But what do I know? All right, guys, I will catch you on the next one. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed. Stay tuned for the next installment of Spooky Ooky Things That Keep Me Up at Night. All right, guys, I love you, and I'll catch you on the next one.